253-3139. Roger Stone taking over here. A lot going on. I wanted to ask you, I know we haven't talked to Corsi since he got hauled in by the Mueller, and since they've had the folks trying to set me up and everything. It is a crazy day in America with the economy coming back, the 25th Amendment they're trying to implement. You've got a lot coming up, so go ahead and take it over, Roger.
Thank you, Alex. First of all, I want to commend you for having Eric Bolling. He's a great broadcaster, and I really admire the way that he's taken the terrible tragedy in his life and the drug overdose of his son, and in his grief, he has used it to try to educate people to ensure that this tragedy doesn't hit other families. It takes enormous courage to have that kind of pain and speak out effectively the way Eric has. So I commend him and I admire him, and I'm glad you had him on the show today.
I admire him as well. Please continue.
So as far as Dr. Jerome Corsi is concerned, ABC News is now reporting that he will testify for the grand jury of Robert Mueller next Friday, this coming Friday. Now, I've had no communications with Dr. Corsi. He is a great researcher, a great writer, and of course, he was the D.C. bureau chief for InfoWars until recently. I can only hope that Dr. Corsi will testify truthfully. I think he will. And if he does, it will be entirely exculpatory because, you see, it was Dr. Corsi who educated me to the fact that Tony Podesta, along with his brother John, were deeply involved in Ukraine, working for the same political party as Paul Manafort, but more precisely that John and Tony were making literally millions of dollars off the oligarchs around Vladimir Putin, the banking deal, the uranium deal, the gas deal, and so on. So it is very clear that the special counsel still has both Alex Jones and Roger Stone in his sights, and they recognize that a precursor to an attempted takedown of Donald Trump must be the takedown of InfoWars, must be the takedown of Alex Jones and yours truly. So we'll keep everybody updated on that threat. I'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, sitting in for the great Alex Jones. That was a terrific lick by the Rolling Stones, circa 1965, a song called Carol, written by the great Chuck Berry. Well, I'm pleased to hear that the Republican candidate for Congress opposing Congressman Eric Swalwell survived a knife attack on him, clearly designed to take him out. But what we need to know now is whether the would-be killer had connections to Swalwell's campaign, what Swalwell knew about this attack, if anything. The American people deserve to know. I certainly hope the FBI is on the case. You know, the Senate Republicans are so ridiculously hapless that this past week, an extraordinary opportunity slipped by. John Dean, who the media lionizes as a whistleblower in Watergate, but who is in fact the man who planned, pushed, and then lied about the Watergate break-in, was before the U.S. Senate and under oath. This would have been a perfect opportunity to ask Mr. Dean about the discrepancies that were discovered by the Watergate special prosecutor between his Senate testimony and what he told individual Watergate prosecutor investigators and the FBI under oath. There is a memo that you can find in my book, Nixon's Secrets, that outlines the fact that Dean lied. Additionally, we know that two White House figures, Tony Ulasewicz and Jack John Caulfield, both of them decorated former New York police officers working for the counsel's office as investigators, say in both their oral histories and in their biographies, which are out of print but can be found, that John Dean ordered them to case out the Watergate DNC complex 6 weeks before the break-in. A golden opportunity was missed with John Dean, one of the great weasels of all time, when he was under oath before the Senate to testify against the candidacy of Brett Kavanaugh. Now, Mr. Dean has very carefully styled himself as a leftist, biting criticism of the George W. Bush administration, Even more vicious criticism of the Trump administration. This is to protect the big lie, the lie that Richard Nixon knew about or approved the Watergate break-in, the lie that Attorney General John Mitchell knew about and approved the Watergate break-in. Mitchell went to his grave denying that because John Dean is the Watergate weasel. If you want to see 12 questions that John Dean won't answer, go to watergateweasel.com. That's watergateweasel.com. John Dean, not who you think he is. President Donald Trump is about to make an extraordinarily important decision. You see, very recently, the White House counsel, Don McGahn, learned that he was leaving the White House. He learned this in a presidential tweet. There you have the 12 questions John Dean doesn't want to answer at watergateweasel.com. Mr. McGahn, in my opinion, has given President Donald Trump not only bad legal advice, but most certainly given him bad political advice. It is Don McGahn, for example, who has consistently opposed the firing of Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions has turned a blind eye to the corruption of the Obama administration, turned a blind eye to the use of a fabricated dossier that was compiled by a former British intelligence agent with the assistance of Russian intelligence, and then used as the underlying legal rationale for the illegal and unconstitutional spying on the campaign of Donald Trump. When Judge Andrew Napolitano of Fox News, my great friend and a friend of this program, exposed the fact that Donald Trump was under surveillance, as was his campaign, Judge Napolitano was widely ridiculed. But it turns out that Andrew Napolitano was absolutely right. In any event, now the president must decide who will replace Don McGahn. McGahn was originally recommended by Corey Lewandowski, the fired campaign manager from the Trump campaign, so it's not surprising that McGahn turns out to be a deep state quisling, a man who is deeply embedded in the Washington neocon two-party duopoly that's brought this country to its knees. And then we learned that Mr. McGahn voluntarily gave 30 hours of testimony to Robert Mueller. 30 hours. Think about that. That's longer than an entire day. What could Mr. McGahn have to say about the president that would be that extensive? And what about executive privilege? Never mind that. What about attorney-client privilege? What was it that Mr. McGahn was in there talking about for 30 hours? No wonder this fellow has been canned. No wonder he read in a tweet that he was leaving. Now, Washingtonians are saying that the president will replace McGahn with an attorney named Emmett Flood. By all of my research, Emmett Flood is a good man, a fighter, a man who puts his client, not the Washington culture, first. So the selection of Emmett Flood, who's currently working as one of the counsels for President Donald Trump, as the White House chief counsel, would be a step in the right direction. You know, I think that the president has had a bad week because he allowed himself to be distracted by the anonymous New York Times editorial that was allegedly written by a senior member of his administration. As I told Chris Cuomo the other night on CNN, I don't believe that anyone in the Trump administration wrote this particular memo. I think it is a fraud upon the people, a MacGuffin, a con job. After all, the New York Times is owned by the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim. Mr. Slim is the largest single donor to the Clinton Foundation. Additionally, Mr. Slim's company received a multi-billion-dollar cell phone contract from the Obama administration. And we have multiple other examples of the New York Times printing things claiming they are fact when they are nothing even close. All the news that's fit to print, embellished with a left-wing tint. is what it should say in that little box in the corner. You're on the Alex Jones Show. I'm Roger Stone, and we have a lot more to break down for you, and I will be right back. But before I leave, let me please ask you to go to the Infowars.com store. This is the lifeblood of what we do here. We cannot exist without your loyal patronage. We have some terrific specials. I'll be talking about them later. But if you're not in the market for one of our great nutraceuticals, find the donate button. A contribution of $25, $50, or even $100 would be a godsend and help us beat back the globalist attempts to censor us into oblivion. I'll be right back. And there you have the great Wilson Pickett, the Wicked Wilson Pickett, with a cover of a terrific Eddie Floyd song, a standard called Knock on Wood. I'm Roger Stone, sitting in for the great Alex Jones. You know, I've been to the D.C. MAGA meetup that's held at the Trump Hotel. If you've never been to the Trump International in Washington, it's a great meeting place for like-minded patriots. And I myself have been to the meetup. I have so many friends that go there, among them the journalists Cassandra Fairbanks and, of course, Jack Posobiec. So I was relieved this morning to learn that there was no bloodshed, even though a crazed leftist threatened to use a gun based on his tweet, and as he put it, take home a number of blood-stained MAGA hats as trophies. This shows you the mental state of the left, the dementia of the far left. Let's be clear. Those who advocate violence are wrong. We denounce white supremacists. We denounce neo-Nazis. We denounce the KKK. We denounce racism in all of its forms. They are the ones who advocate violence. They are the ones who have threatened me and my family, even threatening to kill my sweet little dogs. These people are monsters, and it's getting worse. I can no longer travel in polite society without armed security, and that's a sad factor. I imagine that Alex Jones and others like Tucker Carlson, who I know for a fact has experienced the same kind of threats, have the same kind of thing going on in their personal lives. Let's be clear. Those who are threatening violence are on the left, not the right. So I was also very pleased to learn that Dr. Jerome Corsi did not testify for the grand jury last Friday after a 7-hour rubber hose session with the interrogators for Robert Mueller. You see, Dr. Corsi, as I said earlier, is the individual who educated me in August of 2016 about the Podesta brothers' involvement in Eastern Europe. Specifically, it was Corsi who pointed out an August 14th article by Peter Schweitzer, the author of Clinton Cash, published at Breitbart News, that outlined the fact that Tony Podesta worked for the exact same Ukrainian political party as Paul Manafort. Now, as you may know, Manafort has been indicted for lobbying on behalf of that political party without registering under FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The problem is that Tony Podesta didn't register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act either, but Tony Podesta has been granted immunity by Mr. Mueller. Oh, Mueller says, well, we referred that matter to the Southern District of New York for prosecution. Folks, that's a dead letter. The Southern District of New York will never prosecute Tony Podesta for anything. It's a public relations dodge, a fraud upon the public. So the bottom line is obvious. If you're a Clinton-loving Democrat, well-connected to Bill and Hillary and their criminal enterprise, you can break the law. But if you're poor Paul Manafort, you're held to a very different standard. Now, I'm told that Dr. Corsi will testify, according to ABC News, this coming Friday. Well, that's fine with me. I hope Dr. Corsi will simply tell the truth. The truth is, I had no advance knowledge of the acquisition or the publication of John Podesta's emails. In fact, to infer that, you would have to take my now iconic tweet about John Podesta's time in the barrel and take out the word the, because I said the Podesta's apostrophe S, that's plural possessive, time in the barrel will come. It says nothing about John's email. I never made a reference to John Podesta's emails. But I do understand why those who have read his emails would like the controversy to be over how they were obtained rather than what's in them, because there's evidence of criminality, dirty tricks, and worse. So what better way to distract from the actual content, the criminality of the emails, than to create a controversy about how they were obtained? Candidly, I don't know how they were obtained, but I do think WikiLeaks does what all media organizations do. They receive information from whistleblowers, they confirm its authenticity, and they publish it. So, John Podesta, are any of these emails fake? Are any of them fabricated? Are any of them not accurate? Explain to us what you meant about the kids in the hot tub. Would you mind? So that's where the Corsi matter stands. If Jerry Corsi goes before the grand jury and he tells the truth, it will be simply exculpatory. Then there's the question of Randy Credico. This guy is a trip. A former left-wing radio host in New York City, Credico was allowed to bring his dog into the grand jury. But when I checked in New York State, his dog is not registered as a service dog. In fact, Mr. Credico has no known malady that requires him to have a dog. Well, Credico tells the media he's a comfort dog and he has a note from his doctor. No, he doesn't. Produce it. There is no such note. So why would Robert Mueller allow Mr. Credico to take the dog in to the grand jury? It's very clear. You see, at one point, I learned that Mr. Credico's dog was malnourished, that he wasn't feeding it. You could tell because you could see the dog's ribs, and you could see the dog had some kind of condition regarding its skin. I did tell Credico that if he didn't feed his dog, I would be forced to take the dog. Well, they took the email, and they no doubt showed it to the grand jury. You see, Roger Stone is so evil, so cruel, so vicious, that he threatened to take this poor man's dog. Wow. Will I be allowed to take my dog into court? I kind of doubt it. Then there's the larger question of Mr. Credico. I believe that he may have lied to the grand jury, committed perjury, when he said that no, he didn't serve as an intermediary between Julian Assange or WikiLeaks and myself. You see, I never had any direct contact with Assange. I never received any allegedly hacked emails from them. So let's take a look at this brief video.
You've previously denied being the back channel between Stone and Assange. Did you say that under oath today?
Probably. You want me to say yes? I definitely was not a back channel to Julian Assange, if there was even a back channel to Julian Assange.
And you said that under oath today? They asked you that and you said that?
Yes.
Why would Stone say you were his back channel then?
You know, you're going to have to ask him that.
Assange. You don't know the guy that was the in-between guy between Assange and Roger Stone? That's my wife, Kat. Kat, I'm Randy Credico. I'm the guy that was connected to Roger Stone. You remember him? I'm the guy that's connected now between Stone and WikiLeaks. I'm very close with Julian Assange. Have you seen that I got the
Bingo.
Yes.
Bingo, and there you have it.
Was not a back channel to Julian Assange.
That's called perjury, folks. There you have the lying, liar, lying Randy Credico back to back, telling one journalist one thing and another journalist something else. What did he tell the grand jury? My lawyers can't wait to ask him. That's the state of affairs here, where you have now 12 people that are either current or former associates of mine, questioned by the FBI, at least 9 of them questioned about Alex Jones. What about the relationship between Roger Stone and Alex Jones? Does Roger Stone work for Alex Jones? Obviously, nobody at the FBI tunes in to the War Room every day at 5 o'clock Eastern, where I host a show with my colleague, Owen Schroyer. I'm Roger Stone. I'll have more for you on the other side. But in the meantime, go to the Infowars.com store, folks. This is the lifeblood of what we do here, and we need your help as never before. It's a 360 win. You get great products, and you bolster the fight for freedom.
So Randy Credico is taking his dog to Robert Mueller's grand jury. But the dog is not a registered service dog in New York State. What's this all about? Well, Credico plans to tell the grand jury that I threatened to take away his dog. How cruel, how heartless, with the prop dog right there. What he won't mention is that I did so out of concern that because of Credico's substance abuse and his indigence, the dog is receiving neither food nor medical attention. I stand second to no one in terms of my record of fighting for animal welfare. This will not be the first time Mr. Mueller has misled the grand jury. The stone-cold truth stings.
I really wanted to put that up so people could see my dog, Pee-wee 2.0, one of 2 Yorkshire Terriers, along with his sister, Mimi, who are my comfort dogs and a great comfort to my wife. Now, as I said in the last segment, it's the Infowars.com store that is the lifeblood of what we do here at Infowars. You see, we are not subsidized by any fat cat conservative billionaires. We are not subsidized by any George Soros types. Our sustenance comes completely and totally from the individual Info Warrior audience. You, our loyal patrons, who support us by buying our great products, the nutraceuticals, the books, the T-shirts, and the other great products available at the Infowars.com store. This is, without any question, the very best place to get a copy of my new book, Stone's Rules. And here is a special offer that is available only to those who buy it at the Infowars.com store, rather than, say, Barnes & Noble or Amazon or your local bookstore. It's available in those places, but here's an offer that is available only to Info Warriors who buy it on the site. If you buy Stone's Rules, my latest book, which is kind of like Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, meant for conservatives or people who are launching a career, whether it's in business or politics or media or tech or fashion or agriculture for that matter. These are my rules of the road, kind of like Sun Tzu's The Art of War or Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. These are the maxims and guidelines I've learned in a 40-year career in the American political arena. But if you buy Stone's Rules today at the Infowars.com store and you mail it to me, I will gladly personalize it, sign it, and mail it back to you. No, I'm not using a signature machine, folks. It'll really be my signature with a personalization. Buy your book at the Infowars.com store, mail it to me at the following address with your receipt proving that you bought it from Infowars. There's the address, P.O. Box, Roger Stone, 1007 North Federal Highway, Department 166, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33304. Leave it up there for a second. Buy your book, Stone's Rules. This offer only for Infowars and people who buy it there and mail it to me at that address. It will be my honor to sign it, personalize it, and mail it back to you. I've signed and turned out over 400 books so far from loyal InfoWarriors who know that by buying the book at InfoWars rather than buying it at your local bookstore, you're helping to fortify the fight for freedom. You're helping to fuel what we do here at InfoWars, which is straight from the shoulder investigative journalism. You see, because of the InfoWars store, there's no one telling Alex Jones and the great people at InfoWars what we can and cannot report, what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot educate people about. And that's what provides the terrific spirit and the entire rationale that makes us the cutting edge, the tip of the spear. We need your help now. Please go to the InfoWars store. Alex Jones faces the greatest threat to his broadcasting history in his entire life. Not only is he facing down multi-million-dollar bogus lawsuits, in some cases financed by George Soros and other freaks, but he's also facing a war of censorship where they want to shut InfoWars down across all social media platforms. Don't let it happen, folks. We can't fight if we don't have a war chest, and only you can help us. Please go to the Infowars.com store now. Now, as a individual who has a long-standing personal relationship with the President of the United States, I am concerned about his administration. While I'm not concerned about the direction he's taking in the country, I think that speaks for itself. 3.2 million new jobs, almost 5%, 4.6% economic growth, that's growth in the GDP, in this quarter. The appearance that the very next quarter could actually hit 5.5%, maybe even 6% economic growth, record growth in wages, African American and Hispanic unemployment at the lowest point ever, a record stock market. Yes, President Donald Trump is making America great again. And Republicans, including the president, need to run on a platform of peace and prosperity. But instead, the president has unfortunately gotten dragged into a fraudulent controversy with both the Washington Post and the New York Times. The Washington Post has been in the forefront of publicizing the book by Bob Woodward, held out to us as an icon, a man of impeccable integrity who can't be questioned, when in fact, Bob Woodward is a fraud. He lied about Watergate. He lied about being a military intelligence briefer in the Navy and briefing White House Chief of Staff General Alexander Haig and plotting with Haig to publicize the 18.5-minute gap, which wasn't created by Richard Nixon or his longtime assistant Rosemary Woods, but was put forward by General Haig. How is it that Bob Woodward learned about the gap before the Senate investigating committee looking into Watergate or before the Watergate prosecutors? That's because Bob Woodward was a White House insider, a deep stater from the get-go. Then, of course, Woodward lied about Iran-Contra in the administration of President Donald Trump. Yes, Woodward says that he snuck into the room, the hospital room, of CIA Director Bill Casey, who had been felled by a stroke, and that Casey gave him an exclusive interview in which he confessed everything. The problem was that Casey's stroke had left him without the capacity for speech. How do we know this? Well, Casey's wife and his daughter and his doctor all say so. Busted Bob Woodward. The president should not dicker with Woodward, nor should the president continue his back and forth suggesting that Jeff Sessions, of all people, should investigate who the author is of the New York Times op editorial claiming that they are a Washington Trump administration insider seeking to save the country from President Donald Trump. I know exactly who wrote this. No one. It's a fraud, a MacGuffin. It's a con job. And unfortunately, Donald Trump, who I love, has taken the bait. Mr. President, your record is incredible. You are bringing this country back. Ignore your critics. Don't get down in the gutter with the Washington Post or the New York Times. Talk about an incredible record of economic success and your attempts abroad to bring a more peaceful world. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush couldn't even get the North Koreans to the table, yet Donald Trump has engaged them in peace talks. How's that for changing the world scene? If you want to look at who our real adversaries are abroad, Donald Trump is smart enough to know that the Chinese are the major adversaries for the United States, and that Islamic terrorism is both a problem for ourselves and, of course, the Russians. Those are the issues the president should run on for this election. Those who say, oh, we're going to lose the House, it's over, there's a blue tsunami coming, a little premature in my opinion. The president has the bully pulpit. It's amazing to me that at no time during his presidency has he given an address directly to the American people from the Oval Office. The president has the bully pulpit, and he can put his imprimatur and his message on the upcoming election. Time is short, but Donald Trump has the whip hand if he chooses to use it. I'm Roger Stone. It's been my privilege to be with you here on the Alex Jones Show. Shortly, I will be back with my colleague Owen Schroyer for the War Room. We're going to be taking your phone calls on the War Room today because things are moving so quickly in Washington. Info warriors want to know exactly what's going on.
We're breaking